Welcome to Reaction Land. Hello everybody and welcome to Reaction Land. I'm your host, John Marshall.
Yes.
If you're new to the channel, please remember to like and subscribe. Go ahead and smack that bell to be notified of future upcoming episodes. Joining me today in the virtual studio is the Foxes and Fossils' very own Darwin Conort. Hello, Mr. Darwin.
Good morning, sir.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. You allowed me to get some of my beauty sleep, which I need more of.
Well, thank you so very kindly for rubbing it in. I had to get up early, thank you.
I know.
The early bird gets the worm, I believe that's the term.
Do your people know where you are and know where I am? I'm in Atlanta.
And I am in
as normal.
California. So we're 3 hours ahead, or 3 hours behind, however you look at it. So the Foxes and Fossils phenomena, did you ever see that coming, my friend?
Not at all. We, I think Tim, out of somewhat a little bit of boredom based on his bio, you can read that, a little bit of desperation and boredom. He had always had really good ear and good commercial corporate bands where I would have more edgier rock, southern rock bands. His groups were much more polished than mine, and he had had a good run with corporate work. But that year, was it 2010? No, well, whatever. The 10 or 11 year mark, that particular year, according to Tim, you know, he'd hit a depressed sort of state. And that was just a project with him and Sammy. And then he sort of snuck Maggie in there by asking Maggie, I think they were like in public, maybe at a Chick-fil-A or something, if I can say that. And like, would you like to come sing with us? And it was like, well, you know, a grown man asking, and Maggie was only probably 14 or 15 then. But they knew each other from chorus and church and everything in school. So yeah, when he started that, he was the first one that did it, and he had that aha moment, and then he brought a few of us in on this, and it just, you know, organically grew. Who'd have thought? You know, I mean, this didn't exist, you know, several years ago, or, I mean, YouTube existed, but the way it's exploded, but yeah, who'd have thought? We're still overwhelmed with the whole growth of it exponentially.
So do you feel that the COVID thing did kind of it was kind of a benefit, even though what really wasn't?
Absolutely, another out of left field, you know, turn lemons into lemonade kind of thing. COVID, absolutely, we know that helped because people were frantically searching for something to do. And even as COVID broke out, I even got later on got a communication from a doctor from Moderna who had told us that they listened to us. He's a research fellow, and he says it's really stressful. And we found you guys. We just put the channel on in the lab, and it's Fox and Fossils for us while we try to figure out how to tackle this problem. And I think that was a huge accolade there, just, you know, a research physician saying thank you.
Well, it turns out that just listening to the Foxes and Fossils will cure your coronavirus.
How dare you?
It's possible that it helps.
Absolutely.
And it may help more than some of the other things. You know, let's see what happens.
Sponsored by Pfizer. No.
Yes, Pfizer and Moderna. Foxes brings you Foxes and Fossils.
So the very first band, I guess, was what, the Mustangs? That's how you guys really met?
Oh, no, we met in high school, in grammar school, all the way back to the early 70s, from the same small town here where I am, Hapeville, Georgia, named after Dr. Hape, Hape, not Te, not Hateville, not hate, but Hape,
Right.
Hapeville. But Tim and I we went to different elementary schools together. As you know, they'll have pockets of the smaller schools, and then we all joined up to the local high school at 8th grade. So I've known him my whole life, just about.
Wow. So you also enjoy doing theater work as well.
My experience with theater was, once again, my life just seems to be a series of accidents, some of which I survived and some which are happy here. Our little town ended up being able to, through some, I guess they were splost taxes, hotel motel taxes, since Haple was right by the airport and under in the middle now of a boom, sort of. They managed, it was called the Academy Theater and Performing Arts Center in Georgia, and it's one of the oldest working theaters here. Um, they chose Haple for a South Side location for a brick and mortar building that ended up occupying an emptied out structure on our little Central Avenue here in Haple. It's a 2-story building, used to be our old hardware store. So they built in a theater here, and the music led me to Lauren Fye, Fey. She's the manager and creative director at the theater, and has worked for the Academy for many, many years, probably 30 years, and was a dancer prior to that. The music just led me to her, and we did a few music jobs. I did a few music jobs for her with different musicians in the theater, sort of as a test. We also have next door to it is a reception area, like a small lounge, holds about 60 people with a small stage in there. So I started doing a little bit of music for the theater. I wasn't involved as an actor as much as we were trying to figure out a way to keep the building open in between plays when they're rehearsing, when there's dark weeks and there weren't plays. And this all happened just before COVID hit in 2019. They opened the theater. I had met that lady the year before, and we'd done a little bit of work with her. It wasn't a Foxes and Fossils thing as much as just me sort of getting involved with her in that building. And
Right.
then she made me the curator of the music, which is kind of like it's a nice term for to help book music in there in between. But the thing about that is COVID hurt the theater. Everything went dark, just like Broadway everywhere else. But it helped us with Foxes and Fossils. It didn't help us with the theater, but now things are changing. The theater's back open. So I'm there in a musical capacity, if that makes
Out of
sense.
all the years that you've been performing with the Foxes and Fossils, is there a particular song that you guys have covered that stands out to you?
I'm thinking about the title. I can hear the song that I want to tell you what it is. My favorite song that I like listening to is still Telling Me Lies, the trio song that, um,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Very great song.
right, kind of made famous by Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt. And I need to
Yes.
mention the writer, the lady who wrote the song, and her name escapes me, so I apologize for that. But her song, Telling Me Lies, gives me chills every time I hear it. And I was there for the recording of it. So you think that I'd be immune to that or whatever, or not immune, but that song just, I mean, usually an upbeat song would do it, or, your favorite song or your favorite band, but I don't really have those criteria. So my favorite that I like listening to is Telling Me Lies because it's just angelic. And we
Definitely.
got the thumbs up from the writer too on that as well. So
Oh, I
my
can
hope
only
is that Dolly
imagine.
Parton hears that and I get to meet Dolly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is
Well,
she?
heck yeah.
I mean, she wouldn't know who I was. She would probably want to meet the girls, and they'd be great. They would love it, and I'd be in the background going, uh, "Just over here is a, a member of the. I'm a fossil, and I just wanted to say, hey, Miss Dolly." So that's my goal for that.
Oh,
That's a good goal.
man. That's a great goal.
I met Graham Nash, and so did Tim because of the same kind of situation. When we covered, the first thing we did that we put out was the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. He ended up contacting us within about a year later. He had heard it. So
Isn't
when things
that
like that happen,
something?
it is something. When you revitalize a song just by re-recording a cover song, is by no means, anything like the brilliant genius that it takes to write some of these songs, and we just redo them, and then and yet they've been out of rotation so long. When the original artist or writer contacts you, it's an amazing uh, moment. That's like getting an award for us. That's my Grammys. And Graham Nash said, it's not even my song; it's Stephen Still's song. It was like, that's true, but yet here you are. He's like, well done. And I'll see if I get Stephen. But well, regardless, well done. It's like, well, thanks. Can I call you Graham? I mean, really, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
One of the Todd Rundgren songs that we covered, he didn't contact us specifically, but he posted the song on his Facebook page,
Love
so
is
he
the
approved
answer
of it. I think it was "Love Is the Answer."
with Chase.
Um,
Yes, great song.
I believe that Carole King is a neighbor of a friend of mine in California, and he said that he had talked to her just like over the mailbox kind of thing, and had
Wow.
told her about us. And then later on, she said, "Oh, I love those people. They're great." So just to know you're on the tip of someone's tongue like that um,
Yeah.
is such an affirmation that she just can't buy that.
Oh, not
Like,
for all the money in the world. No, it's true.
not from all these different artists. Just amazing.
So what was it like to win the YouTube award? Man, I see that proudly sitting on your in the background of most of your videos. And I'm like, man, that is so cool.
Once again, a package comes to Tim's house, and we're in the basement now. It's not a deep, cold, dark basement. His basement's not very big, but it's big enough. It's well lit. But we tell people we're in the basement. They wonder sometimes, but uh, that's just where he has a beautiful home.
It's where the
And
magic starts.
it is. And then a package arrives one day, and I think I may have even been there when it did arrive, because um, things come and go through that house. And earlier on, he was doing all the packaging and the CD mailings and stuff, and now he's gotten a third party to do that. But in the earlier years, Tim and Terry did a lot of the legwork and labor for. So their home address is the office address, for these things to come to. And this package arrived, and we opened it, and there was this, commemorative plaque. It's like getting an award with a sports trophy or something. And
Yeah.
we didn't, not really knowing what YouTube's policies were. I mean, we were just once again very pleasantly surprised. It's like, well, this helps legitimize everything. Just another a little bit of proof that for most people this is working really well. We've had some very animated comments lately on from some people that my former wife Jill will look at things for me. She's like my chronicler and advocate. And, some people are just like, why do you do so much cover music? Why don't you do original music? They don't really look into who we are or how we got to this point was by just doing cover music. So we don't interject a lot of original music in there. Not that we don't have it and haven't had it over the years. We've had a lot of it. But that's not the girl who brought us to the dance. Although we did have one song we put out, I think that Tim and I wrote. He wrote a song for his parents. Anyway, there's a little bit of that on there. But anyway, you never know what somebody's going to say. But so far, mostly yays and only a few nays. So
Well, and there's going to be that, of course. It's not a bad thing to be considered a cover band, especially when you're getting the recognition from the songwriters, and you know
yeah, not at all.
that's a
Uh,
compliment.
it is. I mean, so many artists don't write their own material. When they do, kudos to them, because that just indicates, they're not only, great musicians, but they're brilliant songwriters. I watched a special last night on Shania Twain where she had ended up writing a lot of her material, and broke so much new ground and opened doors for country musicians, female musicians. That was an amazing story about her writing. But you
I
don't have
think
to
she's
write.
an amazing performer. She's
Oh,
got a
my
great
God.
story.
Uh, but like, for example, Linda Ronstadt, who we love, uh, rarely wrote any material and did all it. So what do you call her? Do you call her a cover artist?
Absolutely.
She's Linda Ronstadt. I mean, she's epic, iconic, legendary, but yet covered other people's music. So just
Well,
depends on
many
how you
many
want to.
artists have made a living doing that. I mean,
That's right. So
not
and
all of them wrote them all. I mean, Elvis didn't write all the songs.
right. And writing songs for me, for some writers, they immerse themselves in it and they love it. For me, it's like I imagine would be having a baby. It takes me 9 months to write the song. It's painful. I get sick. I double back. I'm good at helping people write songs. I'm good at helping them produce the songs. I'm not much of a writer, and people find that just hard to believe. It's like I'm a guitar player, really, uh, to my core. Ended up being a singer, but basically am a stringer, a six string slinger.
A string
It's
slinger.
just that's it. I mean, I really am just a guitar player. Like I can help you write, done projects, but
Damn it, Jim! I'm a
and I
reactor,
wish I
not a
could do better
doctor.
at that. But I'm just not motivated that way. I mean, some writers get up and will sit and get up and get a legal pad out and they write. And I do write and jot things down like that. But I've always, wanted to. I wish I had more of that bug, but I don't.
You've had the luxury of staying in what would you call it, a safety area where you could actually, pick the stuff that you guys do and mold it and sculpt it and put it out exactly the way you want it.
Yeah, what a great job that is. You know, very lucky.
Out of all of the songs that you guys have done, what was like one of the bigger surprisers for you that you didn't see it coming?
Well, it has to be initially when we did the Crosby, Stills and Nash, the suite with Judy Blue Eyes. Um, that gig was one of only a few showcases that we had started doing, maybe the first showcase. And then, as with Tim's style, he wanted to open that little showcase, and it was at a pizza place. If anybody knows that story, but it was near their house. We've been rehearsing the girls just as a project, and then it's the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, and that still has to be the number one thing that comes out with me because that's the first thing we did, the first song we played in public. One of the hardest songs we've ever done. Yet we opened with it because Tim's a taskmaster in that regard. It's like, well, I don't want to get warmed up and do this. Let's just go out there and kill it right now, and just see what happens. And
Wow.
it it worked, and it worked mostly because of the the great Scott King, our bass player at the time. Rest in peace. Scott's been our friend and bass player for a long time. He passed last year. Um, there was no drums in that, and people don't realize that, but his bass line drove that song, and it was amazing to us as we were doing it. I was sitting there. I mean, I'd rehearsed it, but then when you get on stage, everything changes. You blank, you get nervous still, and when we went into that song, it just galloped away with us, and we were all doing it, but at the same time, we were all surprised we were doing it. You're in the moment, and you're like, this horse is running. It's like, stay on it. And a lot of that was because of Scott's bass playing. He just drove that song right to the finish line. It's
I want to
wonderful.
say I had a request to do that song, a reaction for that. And I was honestly blown away. And until you mentioned it, I never really realized that there was not a drum beat in that song. It's it's so full of energy and excitement that you really don't even take a moment to go, "Hey, there's no
Not
drums in
even
there."
not even percussion, not even a conga or anything. A hand clap, nothing.
And you guys
It
tore it up.
it just the sum of all those parts implied that rhythm, percussion, and it was just in the song because of acoustic guitar playing. And when you're playing acoustic guitar, your right hand is your strumming. You can do, make percussive noises, mostly, kind of scratchy noises or whatever. I make a lot of noise when I play. Tim, it drives him crazy in the studio because I have a lot of unwanted noises. My hands do a lot of things on the guitar that aren't good in the studio, but they're good live. Um, yeah, and it just ran away with us. And, I mean, how can you not at least refer back to that as the hinge pin, kind of the point where it all just spun out of?
Well, that's number one on the Foxes and Fossils countdown.
Isn't that
Number
amazing?
one. Yeah, absolutely. Now, did the original song actually have drums in it, or is
Well, it
that
had a
just...
lot of percussion,
Okay.
Crosby, Stills, Nash Young style. I don't recall a drum track specifically, but definitely percussion. And Stills has such a international sort of Caribbean way he writes as he got older and perfected his craft. You know, each of those guys had a different style, but he embraced those different rhythms and Polynesian rhythms or international rhythms more, I think, than the other guys. So the song in itself inherently has kind of a beat within it, and even if you didn't have percussion, we managed to imply that beat when we did it. And a lot of it was because of Scott. You know, when his bass line is running so smoothly, then the guitars going over it just click, click, click through it. So it was a pleasure to do.
Absolutely, and it's a pleasure to listen to. You guys have definitely honed your skills, that's for sure. Uh, Most of you are very multi-talented. You play more than one instrument. I want to say even Tim himself plays multi instruments as well. Um,
And he's really doing well on the ukulele. He has just embraced that. So we put a lot of those tracks in there now, little rhythm tracks of ukulele and some Nashville tune guitars or whatever. But he's loving that. He's a good guitarist, a rhythm guitarist. He doesn't think so, but he's proficient, and he's proficient at keyboards. He's just his strength is his brain, his production, his ear for harmony.
he's a perfectionist for
He
sure.
is. He is. Isn't that
With
odd? All our opposites attract.
opposites attract, that's for sure.
I mean, Toby is a got big hands. He's got a very light touch on guitar. He's an academic performer. He's an academic musician. I'm a rock blues player, completely different than Toby, completely different than Tim. But together, all of our differences create this stew of sound. When we go in and do things, Tim will say, "Well, here we're gonna." It takes several sessions to complete the tracks, and people think it goes quicker than that, but it doesn't, because once we lay down these tracks, um, he may say, "Don't follow the lead in there. I want you to free form a lead at the end here." Or, there may be a signature line that we obviously do because we don't want to stray too far from the song's original concept rather, in the tune. And then he'll say, "Well, just write a lead part." And I'm like, "Well, I can. You mean like," and at first it would sort of stagger me. It was like, "Now?" He's like, "Yeah, now. We've got a few hours today." So amazingly enough, sometimes we put each other under a lot of pressure to create things that end up sounding very natural and they work well for the song. But we have actually envisioned it, talked about it, created it, recorded it, and then finalized it within just a few days prior to, like, there was not much rehearsal on that song. I guess what I'm saying is I sometimes don't find out what we're playing until I get to his house, and then he'll be
Wow.
recording something, or he'll have had a epiphany and say, "Well, listen to this. And we ought to do that song." And then I said, "What are we going to do today?" He's like, "We're going to do this song." I said, "Okay, I know that song sort of, but we hadn't actually sat down and rehearsed it. We get that rehearsal in during the foundation, laying the foundation tracks, the scratch tracks. So it's an odd way we do things, because it'll put me specifically, like, I get under a lot of pressure, like, to perform it perfectly in a short amount of time, because we got other songs to go, we got other things to do, and it you know I would like to I just find that our process is good, but it's not always so just laid back. It's sometimes quick and down and dirty, and then it gets refined. So, and each song sort of gives you that an idea of how to do that, depending on which way the song goes.
To the average YouTuber who watches your shows, they probably assume that you guys assembled these songs in the same room.
Well, in the old days, you did assemble the songs and rehearse them, and then go into a studio, and a lot of people around one mic, or there weren't all these recording techniques. But we absolutely build it from scratch. Like I said, with the scratch track, Tim, once he decides and they agree on what songs to do, um, he starts thinking of this in his mind with this scratch track, and then he'll lay a guitar or a piano part down and just sing his way through the song, just so we know where the verses are. And then once that happens, then I come in after that and then support all that he's done. But yeah, at that point, it's just he and I and a click, like a metronome, and we can we can build a song with multiple instruments and multiple vocals, just he and I first. Then
Just
if
layering
you were
it.
to, uh-huh, if you were to come in at the end of that day, you would hear like he and I singing a duet, a full-blown, full-length song that we had just the previous couple of hours before had not done yet. Look at this.
Yeah, he's beautiful.
That's my eating. Anyway, and we'll build it just like that in pieces. And Johnny Pike, God bless him, will come in after Tim and I have recorded this whole thing to the click track, and he'll put those headphones on, and then he'll lay down the best drum track, just but he's doing it back to us. So it's in reverse sort of. You think you need the drummer there first to start, but we don't often have it that way, because we're building and previewing several songs at one time, so they're all in different phases of production. So yes, it's
Fascinating.
definitely a stacking kind of thing, and some people like that, some don't, but it's just kind of the way it is with us. But mostly everybody's here now, so we can get together more. Here lately, we've had the girls and us in the same room a lot more, and then the only person then that puts the whole rhythm section in town. So me, Scott, I mean, I'm sorry, Scott. I'm thinking about Scott King. Uh, Tim and me, and then Johnny Pike. And of course, with Scott's passing, that's left that void where the bass player slot is. So we have a good friend here that does it, and also Scott's brother, obviously, that you talked to Ross. So that's
Yeah.
another reason that we have to do some of this and then share the file, because Ross is still in Virginia Beach, where he and Scott grew up. And we've used a gentleman that Tim's used before named Richard Meter. And he's an excellent musician. So, but
Yes,
once
he
again,
is.
sometimes, and he's in Atlanta. So that puts the rhythm section back in Atlanta now, which is good, because at some point, then we have the Tim and I scratch plus Johnny on the drums with whatever bass player we use. A lot of times we don't put the bass line in until way later too, because it depends on just everything really is about the tempo, the arrangement, and really the vocals first, and then we build up around it. So we're very lucky that we can start adding that salt and pepper and all, and sugar and spice like that, because we've got good ingredients.
Absolutely. So you got a big event coming up here, the virtual concert. Uh, Walk us through a little bit of that and how the process is going.
Well, fortunately, in searching for a place to do it, we have our Academy Theater in Hapeville seats 130. So we'll be able to
Mm.
use the theater, the main room, and it's much like a regular theater. The seats are slanted, and they go down to ground level, and the stage is and by stage I don't mean a riser stage. With a theater, the seats look down into the where the action is, but a lot of times it's the flat floor with a set built on it. So we move the sets. We go in that into the theater. We'll be able to go in a couple of days earlier and sound check and rehearse, and then we'll do 2 nights in the theater. I'm thinking, without Tim here to do more specifically, what I'm assuming, and I think it's relatively correct, we'll do 2 nights, do the same shows, same songs. I think do the same wardrobe, and then we can, because everything is not going to be perfect, and then we can pick from those 2 nights. So the pay-per-view part of it won't be broadcast live. It will be documented and videotaped live. And then we'll take those 2 nights, mesh them into one, and then we can release that as a stream or a pay-per-view. We're hoping to sell the theater out because, oddly enough, we're not very famous in our hometown or Georgia. We have a lot of fans. Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's the way it is. I know that we'll have a lot of interest in this show, and it'll be December 30th and 31st. So the last night, second night, will be New Year's Eve, which will be fun, but we'll kind of want New Year's Eve the what we shoot, probably, because it wants to be neutral, as far as, unless we build it as Fox and Fossil's New Year's Eve show, which I don't think we are going to. And then we'll be able to sell tickets. People can come see us from the region, because we've had a lot of interest in the southern states region, where from Mississippi over to South Carolinas, and that we know people will come. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed, do the sets, hope for the best, and in between that time is us picking out the songs now, and then starting rehearsals. And what the rehearsals are similar to how we record. Tim will do a scratch track of the song. We'll do some vocals, and then we can send the parts to the girls wherever they are. If they're in Atlanta, fine, we'll do it live and rehearse live. If not, he'll send out their parts to them for them to rehearse themselves and practice on their own time. Then we'll get together only a couple of times and put it all together. So see, once again, there's that frantic part. You think there's a lot of preparation, and there will be, but it doesn't always reveal itself to be such a laid back, all come in the room and rehearse like you see on TV, and go to the practice room and practice every day until you get ready. It'll be shoot this in here and do this here, and we're going to meet Wednesday night and work on this, and then after that we're going to come back and don't forget to study this, and we're going to move those songs out of the way, do 3 at a time. So it's going to be also a building process until we get to the actual live event. I think we're going to do a 3 or 4 camera shoot. Our videographer and friend Terry Heinlein had started with all the videos many years ago, so I'm sure he'll oversee part of that. I believe that Tim's longtime friend and sound man, Doug Godbold, who's a brilliant engineer and technician, will be our sound man. And so that covers everything except lighting. And the theater has scenic lighting, and we may do a couple of scenes of lighting, but mostly to be lit for video is, you don't have the effect of the concert effect as much, as we want to make sure we document it really well.
Right.
And people can see what we're doing and hear what we're doing, and we can make sure they know that we can perform live. I performed live a lot until COVID. Tim had kind of gone into the engineer tunnel, down that rabbit hole, but I stayed performing whenever I could, because I'm a live person, basically. Like I said, I've learned to be a studio guy, but I'm just a guitar player. Goes live, and stick me in the mix and I'll make something happen.
You prefer to be playing the instruments, of course.
Absolutely.
So in all reality, almost every one of you have pretty much a 9 to 5 job, isn't that correct? Everybody doesn't have like open schedules where I'm not doing anything this week.
Right. I have become that guy this year, sort of a forced retirement. My other job was I worked in film and TV industry in the grip department. You ever seen credits roll by, grips and gaffers and all the people that make the movies? I grew up in the film and motion picture business here in Atlanta, and ended up being a camera dolly grip, which dolly grips move the camera, mount the camera, put it on dollies, put it on crane arms, mount them on cars, whatever. The grip department does that, camera support. So that was
Right.
my day gig, but it was my whole life has been chasing jobs through that industry by referral. There's nobody that gives you those jobs. You network your skills, and you're only good as your last job. So I had a career in motion picture and television up until COVID, and then COVID shut all that down. And then the year after 2020, not many of us worked. And then I got older. It seemed quicker because all this hit. I now in my mid 60s. 2021, it picked back up for me specifically. But then again, you're still in my business, the film business. You're still chasing jobs, and your reputation is important. And then this year, I haven't worked at all in the film and TV industry. They're 14-hour days. I love the business, but I haven't been able to get myself like where I felt like I can. I mean, I've done a little bit of work, but nothing like I had before. So fortunately, I have been able, like you said, nobody has an open schedule except this year. I finally had more of an open schedule. That's why I've been spending more time with Tim. Tim is relatively open, but everyone else has to do their thing. So he and I are fortunate. He has a flexible schedule and has probably a little bit better income, and I have a flexible schedule with not much income sometimes, but I just work around it, and ramen myself to the noodle. Um, but in the beginning, yes, we all were just doing it part-time. Um, and the girls were in high school then, and then they went to college and went to school, and then all the fossils would work. So it started that way for sure. This year's been a little bit different. COVID changed everything, and it still feels like the ripples are changing, but you adjust and adapt. You want it in the rearview mirror. That's definitely.
Yes, you want that as far behind you as you can. So, looking at it from retrospect, if you had any advice that you could give some budding musicians coming up in the world today, what would you recommend to them?
Well, I said it earlier. If you have the inclination, and if music is part of that, I call that a craft. Even though it's a skill and um, it's a talent, you have to have an ear for it. Not everybody's cut out to do that, but if you do lean that way, and do find yourself wanting to be musical, just pursue it and stay at it. Um, because then the music becomes part of you, but it's also, uh, it's odd how, me personally, I'll just go from my own personal perspective. You do it and you practice, or like when I'm doing the camera work, it's a very similar approach for technicians in the film business or actors. Same thing. You work and you work and you work on your craft, at honing your craft and fine tuning it. Um, and you have to embrace yourself and immerse yourself. Actually, was what I meant to say, in it, and don't let the fact that you're not to a certain level stop you, because everyone, all of us are greater or lesser than whoever we choose to compare ourselves to. But really, comparisons are just distractions. If you stay with whatever your craft is, and in this case, it's music with us, stay with it because it'll be a good friend. Now, I've found that being said, it is a friend and a good friend, but it also acts like a friend because sometimes that musical friend is not available, or it seems distant, or I've done so much performing over my life where it just became second nature. And then there would be a gap of not performing. Then when I go back to perform, I'm like, well, can I still do this? I mean, I'm asking myself that question all the time. And people would say, oh, you've been playing guitar all your life. Of course you can do it. And I'll say, well, I'm glad that you guys are so positive about it, but in my head, in my fossilized brain, sometimes I wonder. So constantly, even now, um, testing myself to see what I can do, and that's why we're doing the live gig is to make sure we can give that part of ourselves to the fans. But I've just noticed that lately, and now we're in our 60s. Like we're lucky, Toby and I both, or all of us actually, that our hands still work well. Because we're older. Arthritis. A lot of musicians that I've known throughout my life don't play or sing anymore because they just
Carpal
can't.
tunnel. Say, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
And I can't imagine going through that where I just had to just put everything down. Like behind me are guitars on in a rack, and my house is just full of amplifiers. My house is like a combination music store, hardware store, barn, and campsite, all inside one house. It's like a warehouse that just happens to have bedrooms and a kitchen and a bathroom. But you know,
Oh
um,
man.
I can do that. I live alone, so except for the cat. But anyway, embrace your craft, immerse yourself in it. Don't be too disappointed. Don't compare yourself too much. Just do what makes you happy. And if it doesn't work or you get um, discouraged, you rest a little bit. But if the music's really in you, you'll come back to it, and it'll be a good friend. Guitar's been a good friend to me. I'm probably the one who should have been a better friend to my guitar, more disciplined or more rehearsal. Like right now, I'm just practicing a lot on my own or doing diddles or have the little squeezy ball because um, from studio work and then going out and playing 2 hours straight, 2.5 hours, it's going to be a whole different thing, for us to do 20 something songs and with the bar that we set about doing them almost perfectly, that's going to be it's a tough
That's not going to be easy, that's for sure.
because people just think we have, because we still haven't decided exactly which songs we're doing. We've gotten phases and groupings of songs. So yeah,
Well, the sad thing
it's
is you're never going to do all of the ones that the fans want to hear. They'll always be, well, what about this song? You didn't do this one.
I know it, but maybe if this the theater gig is successful, then that will open the doors, no pun intended, to the theater for us just to return there and do another, maybe type of gig or go into the other half of the theater where the reception area is and do a condensed down version of acoustics of us. We do a little bit of that in the studio right now with Tim. That when the girls are here, we'll all gather around and kind of do a live thing. We'll shoot that out to the Patreons first, of the patrons rather, on the Patreon page. So I'm assuming it's under foxesandfossils.com is our website. It'll lead you to the Patreon site. And then, as typical with Patreon, from my brief experience with it, uh, there are monetary levels. I think what we have is 5, 10, $25, and this is per month, maybe 50, and I know it tops out at $100 per month, which is, of course, a lot of money. And don't expect people just to jump on that. But I would be really happy if just thousands of people just did the $5 a month thing, because
Absolutely.
because we have some really philanthropic people that help us financially that we have. I'm not sure how many we have at this upper level tier right now, but um, they're very generous to do so. And people give us their time, their talent, and their finances sometimes. We've got people that do the stats um, on the Facebook page. The administrator, John Hazeldine, comes to mind, but I don't want to leave anybody out, so I won't start that. But we've ended up having people that work with us that whatever skill they had, they apply it to um, our business now, Foxes and Fossils Music. Um, so you can be a patron, and then what we do is we do separate special little videos and vignettes. We have a Zoom meeting. So far, it's just been once a month. Somebody has said we should do two, because then the patrons can come on and talk to us in a group and everything, and we get to get their feedback. And believe me, they have it. We're
Nice.
very accessible, and our fans are like family because they'll make a lot of comments to us, and I'll have had people say, "Do you know this person?" I'm like, "Not really." Well, they seem to be very opinionated. I'm like, "Yes, they are, and that's okay." But now I've never met them, and but they seem to. We have this symbiotic thing going that I think it's just because we're available. The celebrity is downplayed. The availability is always there. So
So
I don't need.
you've got your Patreon page, you've got your you got the foxesandfossils.com where you can get downloads and check out the new CD.
Uh-huh.
Heard there was a real kick butt track with Scott King playing his bass and wailing away on it. But that was one original track on that CD. Is that correct?
I think that was it. It was just a
But the
an
rest are all
insert.
covers.
Absolutely. I forget exactly why we may have inserted that one. Maybe just due to fans saying,
They wanted
why
one.
do you do so many covers? Why don't you do, originals? It's like we weren't in the market. We spent our whole lives writing music and playing music, trying to make that, one in a million thing. Or Tim's been to Nashville and done the whole Nashville circuit. I haven't done that. I'd be more inclined to go to California and I want to play the Whiskey a Go Go or something. I guess it's not there anymore, but um,
Absolutely.
uh,
I definitely thank you for your time, my friend, and I thank you for uh, doing the interview, and I appreciate it so much. We'll have to have you back on the show when we can have multiple guests as well. I look.
well, I'm gonna try to do that for you too, because I go to Tim's now more often. Get up there where one day he and I are together. That would be fun.
That would be neat. I'm sure all of us would enjoy that. I wish you all the luck in the world, my friend, and we will definitely keep in touch. Um,
I'll be here.
I've enjoyed watching you guys grow, and I think that this is just beginning.
It's it's an amazing musical adventure that we're on, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's going to be a fun ride.
It has been so far.
And we look forward to your virtual concert, which we'll get more information as it draws near.
End of the
Uh,
year, the Academy Theater and Hateful and Performing Arts Center. You can find all that. I don't have links up yet, but that's what we're all shooting for now. For the Fox and Fossils, I've got a few other little gigs with other bands coming up. So
as long as you're keeping yourself busy
I'm
and keeping
trying.
yourself young, that's all you can do, brother.
I'm trying to keep these hands going.
Keep them nimble.
Thank you
Well,
very much.
and I thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and I look forward to our next interview. God bless you, my
Yes,
friend.
sir.
Well, folks, all I can say to that is that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm John Marshall. Till the very next time that we meet, God bless you.